be recorded. Okay, there we go. In this case, then, just as a little side note, for anyone that doesn't want to be a part of the recording or be uploaded on the YouTube video, just let me know at the end of the meeting and I will be able to help censor you out and everything. All right, but the next one is something living. All right, so since this is already up, just go ahead and find something living. Yeah, I think Weston got it. Houseplants.
My succulent
Grace, was
right
that
by
a
my
cat?
desk.
Yes, it was.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure, but that was, it looked like a very nice cat, so that's good. Most people
Yeah, I kind of disrupted his sleep, but it's okay.
Okay. At least he could participate in our fun chapter meeting. That's all that really matters. All right, so in that case, Weston is that one, and we've had our practice. Okay, so what is next, Kirthna? Okay, well, I can all right, so something new. So something relatively new that you've gotten. Okay, I think Grace was first.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Grace, what object did you have though? I couldn't see it.
Oh, I got a new wallet. They're like
sweet.
their card.
Nice. Okay, sounds good. And I think that means there's one more. There should be one more, I think. All right, a glass or a bottle of water.
Naga got that one.
Yeah, I think Naga was first for that. Okay. Well, looks like you all have your hydration devices very close to you. So Shivani's wish for you all to stay hydrated for the rest of this meeting should be very easy to uphold. But yeah, that was our community builder. And I think in that case, we're ready to get started with the ghU, and that's what's next. Should be. Sounds good. So I'm going to let Sabarish and Tripura take it from here.
All right. So today, guys, our ghU is going to be on the importance of a good night's rest. And we're going to be talking a lot about the importance of sleep and why you guys should get a good night's rest. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by talking about like a little bit of the science behind sleep. So we know that sleep is a natural process, but it's also like a super important process of altered consciousness. And it's kind of paradoxical when you think about it, because while our bodies are like super restricted and like locked in, our internal machinery is still like active. And this is what sleep is like actually super important for. The two main processes are like helping us with like anabolic processes and also like retaining our memories. And this brings into the second point. While our bodies are pretty inactive, like the point of it is to like stay locked in place so we don't be disrupted. Our brain is super active, even reaching levels of wakefulness during REM sleep. Next slide, please. And so the way sleep is broken down in like people is through something called the sleep cycle. And so it splits it up into a couple of distinct stages. Stage one is the first shift from wakefulness to sleep. It's when our brain and body activity begins to slow. You can see in the chart to the right where during the wakefulness, there's a lot of like closely together spindles, while in stage one, it's starting to get like further apart and like shorter. And our body activity also begins to slow, meaning our breathing and heart rate begins to drop. Stage two is when this goes the next step further. Our body temperature drops and our heart rate and breathing dip even lower. And our brain begins to prep to enter deep sleep. One unique thing about it is there's these, if you can see the picture, there's these little like spikes called sleep spindles. Not sure what they do, but they are little spurts of activity that kind of indicate your body is starting to go into deep sleep. Stage 3 and stage 4 are the most important parts of sleep. Stage 1 and 2 are just to prep for those parts. Stage 3 is deep sleep. Your body activity drops to an all-time low. It's very hard to wake you up. Your body's locked. Your breathing and heart rate drops to an all-time low. But in this place, a lot of restorative functions take place. First of all, there are two main things that happen, and one of them is kind of theoretical, but one of them is you're supposed to cycle through your cerebrospinal fluid. This is just a theory also. And it's also like an important stage to feel well rested. And this is where like a bunch of the anabolic processes take place. Your growth hormone is emitted. This is where your growth happens. And so if you don't get enough deep sleep, it's really hard to like grow after working out. And the next important stage is REM sleep. Your brain activity spikes to an all-time high. This is when dreams occur. Your eyes start to move rapidly, which is what REM sleep stands for, rapid eye movement. And this is where memories shift from the short term to long term. Next slide, please. So this is like the overall sleep cycle of a healthy sleep of 8 hours. One important thing you can see here is through each sleep cycle from stage 1 to stage 4, your REM sleep increases, meaning your memories are better stored. Your deep sleep also occurs in like higher stages. And so it's important to have like a good night's rest because you get to go through all these cycles, get to store all these memories, and go through all these functions of like anabolic processes to build up and grow better. And so there are 2 drives which make us fall asleep. The first thing is called the sleep-wake cycle. It's kind of like the homeostatic portion of it. The longer we stay up, the more pressure there is to sleep. Your body just wants to go to sleep the longer it's awake. And this is thought to be caused of a buildup of adenosine, which if you guys are taking like physiology or something, it's just a byproduct of using your body's main energy source, which is DP. The other thing that makes us fall asleep is something called circadian rhythm. And these are just cycles of light and darkness, which direct the production of important hormones. And so when it's dark, something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus produces a hormone called, or instigates the pineal gland to produce a hormone called melatonin. And I'm sure you guys have all heard of this. It's like a popular sleeping aid, even though it isn't. And this is produced when it's dark. And this helps us start to calm down, reduce our heart rate, do all this stuff that goes into stage 1 and stage 2 sleep. In the light, our circadian rhythm produces cortisol to keep us awake.
Okay, so can everybody hear me all right? I just want to make
Yep,
sure
you're good,
because
Irene.
I'm in a different setting. Okay, great. So what happens if a person doesn't fall asleep? Overall, this has a lot of negative impacts on a person's health, and the Sleep Foundation actually likes to make a distinction between the different types of conditions that one develops when they do not get enough sleep. So the first one is acute sleep deprivation, which is for short-term periods, usually for a few days or less. And this is a significant reduction in the sleeping time. There are different suggestions as to what a person should sleep at night, to how much time. So it depends, but usually when you go for more than 48 hours, that is considered chronic sleep deprivation or insufficient sleep syndrome. And this is curtailed sleep that persists for 3 months or longer. And usually this is by the time you start talking to doctors so that you can get proper medication or treatment for it. We also have chronic sleep deficiency or insufficient sleep, which is ongoing sleep deprivation. And this is for sleep fragmentation or other disruptions, like when you wake up suddenly and you're not able to maintain like a constant flow of sleep throughout the night. And insomnia is something that is also kind of different from sleep deprivation, which is that actually the person has the time to go to sleep, but they just cannot. Which, and in sleep deprivation, usually people do not have the time. So next slide, please. So for short-term or acute sleep problems with sleeping, you have a lack of alertness, excessive daytime sleepiness or napping, impaired memory, relationship stress, and this can include in your work life and your social life, wherever. Your quality of life decreases because you're not able to enjoy things as you once could. And there is a greater likelihood for car accidents because you're never fully alert to keep up with your day-to-day routine. Next slide, please. For long-term or chronic problems, we have high blood pressure, diabetes, different heart diseases, obesity, depression, immunodeficiency, lower sex drive, and mental health disorders. So as you can see, usually for long-term situations, this really can affect the person's lifestyle completely. And this is when one starts looking into other options to kind of make up for all that deprivation.
All right, so this is going to be our first activity. I'm going to post the directions in the chat just in case, but basically, and we'd prefer to have your guys' cameras on for this case. We're going to go through a series of questions, kind of like a questionnaire. And each time you'd answer yes to a question, you get a strike. When you have 5 strikes, you have to turn off your camera. So I'm gonna
So
post
the last one
directions,
remaining will be the winner of this game.
even though the winner doesn't get a prize.
Yeah, there's no prize. Bragging rights, you get bragging rights.
Also, we're gonna ask to stop sharing.
Wonderful. All right, so the all of the questions are in the form of have you or do you. So I will just read the remaining portion of the sentence. So have you or do you have trouble falling asleep every night? Inspiration.
All right. Have you or do you sleep 7 to 9 hours a night?
Have you or do you have an unbroken night's rest? Okay.
Have you or do you need an alarm to wake up every day?
Feel tired when you get up or have trouble getting out of bed?
Do you fall asleep in your morning classes easily?
Skip breakfast often.
Have you ever stayed up all night before an exam?
That one should be one. There we go. Felt you couldn't sleep due to stress.
Do you guys get up frequently in the night?
Do you guys fall asleep shortly after waking up in the middle of the night?
Do you find it difficult to sleep early on the weekends?
Or do you sleep extra hours on weekend mornings?
Do you get up at different times every day?
Do you yawn a lot during the day?
Do you eat close to bedtime?
Do you drink a lot of caffeine or coffee?
Do you take multiple naps during the week?
Or sleepwalk?
Or have dark circles?
Or use electronics right before bed?
That's the last of our questions, but
Looks like
hopefully
Irene is
you
the
guys
winner.
can see pretty quickly that everyone's screens went black after
Yes,
the first 10
Irene.
or so questions.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. We were supposed to, I forgot we had to turn off our screen. I should
Oh,
have
no,
turned
I
off
thought you
so
were
long
just-
ago. I'm sorry. I am horrible at
All
this
right.
game.
So as you can
I
see, our
lost.
sleep is not really
I
the greatest.
quickly lost. I'm sorry. My bad. But I quickly lost. Nobody think I'm a good sleeper. I'm horrible. I stopped counting at 13. So I'm just going to stop.
Okay, dokes. So as you can see,
now
it
we're
was-
gonna have you guys break up into breakout rooms to discuss the results of this little questionnaire. I'm gonna go through some more breakout or discussion questions.
just keep in mind, I try to discuss how these questions, I guess, affect you and how often you find yourself slipping into these bad sleep habits. And then there are some other discussion questions that you can go. So yeah, we'll just split you up. Oh, my lights went out. Okay, that's weird.
Okay, so for internal people, how many breakout rooms would you like? Because I'm assuming we're going to keep the same ones for the breakout rooms and that people will be leading them. At least that's my goal. So I assumed the way it would work is that there would be an internal person in every room and then I would randomly assign other people. So how many, is it just one per internal person that's here at this meeting?
That would work. But
Probably
they might
4
be-
breakout rooms.
Yeah, I think 4 is enough.
Okay. So for this one, do you need it assigned any which way or particular? Or do you need anyone to not be in the same room?
No.
Just have I guess one internal like member per like breakout room. Other than
Okay.
that, it can just be random.
All right, sounds good. Also, I do apologize. This is my first time putting people in breakout rooms. This is probably going to take like 5 minutes. So sorry for the awkward silence that's about to happen. But if anyone wants to fill it with any sort of discussion, please feel free to do so. So yeah, Kirthana, if you're able to start sharing the slides again, I think, and then internal, you guys are able to pick it up wherever you left off.
Actually, if anyone wants to share back on what their group discussed, you guys can do that now.
I could go. In our group, Perry was mentioning that he finds that pulling an all-nighter is much worse than just sleeping for an exam, and which I think is something that I definitely agree with and should be, I guess, put out there more often. Because pulling an all-nighter may seem appealing, but it seems to not be great for your brain, and then you just doesn't work the best, and your brain doesn't react as quickly. It's just not working that great in the exam, and you might just be making stupid mistakes where you might not have if you had slept.
I can go. Naga mentioned a great point in our room that I can attest to, where if you're like studying for an exam the night before, and if you just like don't know the material by then, it's not going to really help you to just stay up for those extra hours, and instead just falling asleep to remember the rest of the information that you reviewed would definitely help. And yeah, we talked about how a lot of people, or a lot of pre-med students especially, sacrifice their sleep for academics, their exams, homework. Yeah, and there's definitely a culture in like not getting enough sleep, and then getting iced coffees and not being able to eat as much because you're prioritizing your academics over your health items.
In my group, I thought that an important point was that we mentioned how we try not to sacrifice sleep, but like in academic situations and even like social situations. So just like what Sonia said before, if you feel like someone else is like next to you and they're staying up, you're more likely to stay up as well. So, and also for like the effect on mood, we said it was like really hard to function the next day if you were to stay up later. And at that point, is it like even worth it to stay up?
Anyone from your guys' group, Achi or Irene?
We kind of said kind of the same stuff too. Like, most of our group said we sacrifice sleep for school. Sometimes they're like tests that you have to like stay overnight for and cram up. But like other groups said, they brought a good point that if it's like 2 hours left for the exam and you're like just starting to like cram up information, it's just not going to be helpful, and you're gonna be, first of all, stressed out during the exam, and then cramming up doesn't really like is helpful for long-term exams or like retention. So definitely get your sleep in this semester.
Yeah, for sure. Like we mentioned earlier, sleep is super important, like especially a REM sleep for like shifting the memories from like short term to long term. So in order to like actually like learn effectively and like retain knowledge, having like a good night's sleep is like super, super important. And hopefully you guys realized that like throughout your like breakout rooms that all of us are like super willing to sacrifice sleep. It's kind of like a huge problem. But I mean, hopefully we can do better. I think we can move on to the next slide.
All right, so we have some sleep disorders that we're going to cover. Let's start with insomnia. This is one of the most common sleep disorders that you'll ever hear of. Around 1/3 of the adults experience insomnia symptoms, and even up to 10% have symptoms severe enough for them to be diagnosed with clinical insomnia. And this is usually a condition where you like have trouble falling asleep or even staying asleep, and you might wake up during your sleep at night and then not be able to fall asleep again. And when you wake up, you're probably going to be feeling like tired, and throughout the day when you're taking classes, you might feel sleepy again. And this can be due to many reasons. It can be due to stress. It can be like due to schedule changes. If you're starting a new job or you're traveling through jet lag. And some sources have even said it can be through genetics. There's some genes that contribute to insomnia. And then we do have sleep apnea, which is when you experience like breathing difficulties while you sleep. So sometimes it can be paused from time to time, or it can also become very shallow. And symptoms can include loud snoring. You can have dry throat or sore throat. Some nightmares are even common. And usually when you wake up, you might experience some headaches. And if it is not treated pretty soon, it can like lead to daytime tiredness or even more riskier problems such as heart problems or even high blood pressure. Okay, now we have sleep paralysis. This is when you kind of are conscious, but you are not able to move like any part of your body. You're kind of in like a state of paralysis, which is super scary. And this occurs during the stages of wakefulness and sleep, like Savarish previously covered. And during this period, you might not be able to like move some parts of your body or speak, such as like that. And this can last from anywhere from like a few seconds, and it can go on to even a few minutes. So it can be pretty severe or less severe depending on the situation. And some symptoms, actually some factors that can induce this are lack of sleep, not getting enough sleep, like we said, certain medications too, such as for ADHD. Again, stress is a big one, and sleep schedule changes, like we said, and even other sleep disorders such as narcolepsy and nighttime leg cramps can even contribute to sleep paralysis. And the last one is narcolepsy. This is kind of like a combination of a neurological / sleep disorder, and it can cause like really heavy daytime sleepiness. So like you might be in your class and suddenly you might feel an overwhelming amount of feeling of falling asleep. And so this is called narcolepsy. So it doesn't have any warning signs, so you can just like fall asleep pretty quickly. And some symptoms can include hallucinations, sleep paralysis, disrupted sleep, and lack of energy. And even it's going to be hard to like concentrate on whatever you're focusing on that day.
Yeah, so sleep deprivation and sleep disorders can have adverse effects on your emotional and mental health. And this is because short-term memories are consolidated into long-term memories for learning purposes. And then this also includes how your thoughts and memories are analyzed during REM cycle, as Sabarish mentioned earlier. And so with sufficient amounts of sleep, like 7 to 9 hours for most people, your brain is able to consolidate and like evaluate, analyze thoughts, memories, and interactions into positive emotional content. And so this influences your daily moods and reactivity. With sleep deprivation, individuals often feel fatigue, mood changes. They have difficulty concentrating, memory problems, and experience paranoia, as well as sometimes even hallucinations. And especially with mental health disorders, anxiety disorders, like post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety, and depression. They often experience nightmares, insomnia, and have difficulty staying asleep. And so when you wake up in like increments, you're not able to complete all the stages of the sleep cycle and the REM cycle. And so your brain isn't able to restore your body up to its fullest potential. And that's why delayed sleep phase disorder, which is another effect of mental health disorders, is very bad because your body's internal clock is pushed back or set back a few hours. And so even though you're like trying to fall asleep, you're unable to, and you're not able to get the sufficient amount of sleep. And so the question is this like an endless cycle? Unfortunately, 10 to 18% of adults suffer, or in the US, suffer from sleep problems. And 50 to 80% of psychiatric patients, studies have shown, suffer from sleep problems as well. People with insomnia are 2 times more likely to develop depression and or anxiety. But there's also like this twofold thing where a lack of sleep is also a diagnostic for generalized anxiety, PTSD, and schizoaffective disorder. And so like the picture there shows how one stressor can lead to losing a little bit of sleep, and then you can feel tired for the next day, and then you're not able to complete as many tasks as you thought you would. And that can not only add to like your list of stressors, like your list of homework that you have to complete, but it can also create like this feeling of low self-esteem where you're not being as productive. And there's also like this ideal or ideology where sleep isn't, where if you're sleeping, you're not doing as much work as you could be doing, especially like when you have a list of assignments to complete. And so you're not getting enough sleep, and it's just this complete endless roller coaster. And every single time you go around it, it just gets more exhausting. However, one of the treatments I did want to mention for insomnia and mental health disorders is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more effective, or it allows medications to be more effective, especially for depression. But it allows, with like a counselor, it allows clients or patients to learn how to fixate more on the present than on the past. And so it teaches them how to identify their problems and develop an awareness of like their negative thinking, and then to counteract that and learn how to be more proactive and learn how to address their problems so that they can fixate on the present and how to achieve their goals for the future.
So we'll be heading back into breakout rooms, and we have a little document for you guys to follow along with some questions to discuss.
All right. Anybody have any cool thoughts from your groups?
I think that something we mentioned a lot was the workaholic culture that we kind of have, and how that disrupts the amount of sleep we get and ultimately makes us less productive. And then a really good idea that I heard from one of the members of my group was that to counter the workaholic movement, we should have like a sleep movement for young people's health, because young people are often affected by workaholic culture more, like especially like young professionals, because you're trying to like adjust to a new environment, or like college students because you're trying to do the best you can academically. So I feel like, so she said that like socially and like as a society, we should work to try to counter and like prioritize our health, and like try to make everyone prioritize their health.
On top of that, what I really loved about my group's like nighttime routine that they were talking about, in order to like not intentionally prioritize their mental health, but a lot of them would meet up with like their friends or like roommates and be able to just like sit down and eat together or watch TV, and that was sort of just like a mental release.
For one of her questions, the last one, the nighttime routine, many people in our group said they go on electronics and use electronics before bed usually. And I think we all can improve that on a little bit, because Studies have shown that if you are on your phone or laptop just before going to bed, that can like suppress not only your melatonin levels, but also be damaging to your eyes. So I think having a little break before being on your phone and then sleeping can be a really good improvement in our routines.
Something else the group I was in brought up was that like also being on your phone like leads to that cycle of, oh man, I'm only get like 4 hours of sleep, I have to sleep at this time and stuff like that. So that can also be like self-damaging and a bit frustrating. Any other thoughts on how like the historical perspectives on sleep work? All good. I just thought it was curious how like a lot of like in the past, like biphasic sleep was the big deal, even though they got like 8 hours. Like they always didn't like broken, it was always fragmented, which if you guys saw like the overall sleep cycle thing isn't good for your REM sleep because REM increases in magnitude each time you have it. And it breaks away when you like separate it. So I just thought that was curious. If we don't have any other discussion points, I think we can move on to the next slide.
So some factors that affect the quality of your sleep include like having an irregular sleep schedule. So it's important to try to sleep and wake up at the same time each day, because if not, your body gets used to it being irregular, and that ultimately affects the quality of your sleep and how long you're able to be asleep for. Another important factor is your sleeping environment. So the amount of blue light that you expose yourself to before you sleep. So it's recommended to not use electronics before bed, and then to try to sleep in as dark of an environment as possible, because excessive light is a stimulant that like makes our brain think we're awake. And then consuming excessive alcohol or caffeine before bed can mess with your ability to fall or stay asleep. And then, as Ati mentioned earlier, sleep disorders may affect your quality of sleep as well. And then, like Savarish was saying, biphasic sleep, which is when you divide your sleep into two sections. Like it's when you describe. So, for example, you might sleep 5 hours at night and then take a 2-hour nap during the day, or you might sleep 6 hours at night or take a half an hour nap over the day. Ultimately, the goal is to get to 8 hours or so of sleep, but to like break it apart into different sections. But research has showing like mixed results for that. That works really well for some people, and then for others it doesn't. So like if you do have a biphasic sleep routine when that's not necessarily the best for your body, that could affect the quality of your sleep. And then, as Somya mentioned earlier, mental health disorders often affect the quality of people's sleep, and depression and anxiety disorders are commonly linked to insomnia. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the social aspects of sleep. Our work culture often causes sleep deprivation, and that detriments our health and productivity. The workaholic culture mentioned earlier often makes us sleep less, and then when we actually get to work or school the next day, we end up being less productive. And this has caused Americans generally to sleep 1 to 1.5 hours less on work days, which is obviously bad for your health. And then a common disorder is shift work sleep disorder, which is an illness that occurs commonly in those who work night shifts or who work irregular shifts, and who like have work that makes their sleep schedule irregular. And some symptoms of this are insomnia or even like excessive fatigue. Like there's like a spectrum. Stress from factors like poverty often contributes to a lack of sleep. So social determinants wise, white collar workers generally get a greater amount quality and amount of sleep than blue collar workers. So that's something that we need to work as a society as well. And that was kind of it.
All right, so power napping. So I know, unfortunately, we don't get as much sleep as advised. 7 to 9 hours is very difficult as a college student, I know. But power napping seems to be the new thing that people are talking about or have been talking about for the last couple of years, in terms of helping rejuvenate yourself later on in the day. And so the power napping is basically the act of taking a short nap during the day in order to rejuvenate yourself. And it's anywhere between like 15 and 30 minutes, but experts say not to keep it any more than 30 minutes because then you start entering deep sleep, which is really difficult to get out of. And they also say that longer naps makes it more difficult to fall asleep at night, especially because your sleep schedule has now been shifted and you might not get restful sleep at night when you take longer naps in the daytime. But then studies show that a 20-minute nap in the afternoon has more positive effects than 20 minutes of extra sleep in the morning because most people get really tired after 8 hours of being awake. And so this can really help, get yourself more active, give your brain more sharp, and you can continue on with the day. And the other interesting thing also is that they say that later on in the day, like around after 3 p.m., a lot of people reach for coffee or something in order to keep themselves awake or an alert for the rest of the day. But they find that taking a 20-minute power nap is actually much more effective than drinking coffee after 3 o'clock. So you might consider doing that instead. Into the next slide. Some people say, some research shows that the 1 hour nap has more restorative effects than the 30-minute nap, but it's really difficult to get out of it. And as I mentioned earlier, it may affect your sleep schedule. But the thing with power napping is it's all about trying to figure out what works for you and how long your sleep cycle is. Because they say a normal sleep cycle is about an hour and a half, but sometimes it could be less, it could be more. So you definitely want to try and experiment and find out how long of a nap works for you. And unfortunately for some people, it doesn't really work out too great. Napping, like I personally can't take naps that well, but I know that works for a lot of people. So it just kind of depends on your person. So it's a thing that you kind of have to work with trial and error. But there are some really good tips for an effective nap. And one of them is to avoid caffeine after not AM, that was meant to be PM, my lord. But after 3 p.m. And if you don't want to take a nap for a long time, set an alarm. That's really great because you'll be up anyways, and then you'll be able to kind of adjust the time. Because like I know some people who their power naps are 7 minutes long. It's a very specific number, as you understand how your sleep cycle works. And sometimes if you don't feel like taking a nap, just rest your eyes. Studies show that simply doing that has restorative effects to memory and concentration. Just closing your eyes and not really thinking about anything, or closing your eyes and putting on some music can really help just keep you focused for the rest of the day.
So we got some possible clinical treatments for sleep and sleep disorders. These are three main ones, but there are obviously some other medications that are available to treat sleep disorders and just a lack of sleep. So one of the main ones is medical marijuana. It's very effective, shown by research, for especially treating symptoms for insomnia, restless leg syndrome, anxiety, and even PTSD. What it does is makes you more relaxed and makes your body go into a more deeper state of sleep. That means that when you wake up, you're going to feel more refreshed and more energized throughout the day. And the biological aspect of it is by binding it to the cannabinoid receptors. And what it basically does is increase the adenosine levels, like Sabarish mentioned in the first few slides, which basically suppresses the brain's arousal system. So it makes you feel kind of into a more sleepy / sedated state. Then we have diphenhydramine. It's an antihistamine that can also be used for taking care of sleep disorders or making you fall asleep easier. What it does is basically allows the neurotransmitter, which is called histamine, to build up in synapses, which is a part of your brain. It's more complex than that, but basically it makes you go into a more sedated state, again, like medical marijuana, and it promotes much more deeper sleep. And lastly, we have trazodone. It's a medication usually for sinuses or like other cough-like symptoms. But if you take it at low doses, it can help you go to sleep much faster and also stay asleep for a longer time. It's also used to mainly treat insomnia. And what it does is basically regulates serotonin and blocks off other chemicals that might interfere with serotonin and other neurotransmitters. And again, it leads to a more better feeling of relaxation, tiredness, and sleepiness, making your body more comfortable and adjusted for a deeper sleep.
So what can be done or what can help? The first thing one can do is work with a doctor and kind of get an idea of how complex the situation actually is, how much the person is losing sleep and such. Another thing that is very recommended is to focus on sleep hygiene, which is actually kind of adjusting your environment and your daily habits in order to promote better sleep at night. Address sleep deprivation and prioritize sleep. And this can be done by having consistent schedules, setting boundaries for work and life, and sometimes even adjusting your devices to kind of, put in, do not disturb mode and have a bedtime routine. All of these things kind of help a person get into this mindset and to this routine of, okay, I have to go to sleep. So it actually helps a lot of people, and many studies have shown how greatly this can increase the likelihood of a person going back to sleep or falling asleep in general. And another thing is to avoid things that can interfere with sleep, like how we kind of mentioned electronic devices, alcohol, caffeine after 3 p.m. is a no-no, and naps throughout the day, usually just trying to keep them as power naps or not have them at all, so that you can leave all of that for the nighttime. And get frequent sunshine exposure, because by getting the most out of your day, you kind of forcing yourself to fall into this, again, this routine where you, by the time it's nighttime, you will be tired and you will go to sleep a lot faster. So yeah, that's our presentation, and thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, in that case, just a quick recap and then what to look forward to coming up. So our ghU was over the sleep disorders and health. This will be on the YouTube channel at some point. So like I said earlier, if you don't want your face shown or anything censored at any point, please let me know. So that way, when we upload this video, you can actually be censored from that. Coffee with the Co-Pres is going to be starting soon. So Ajit and I this week are going to work on creating a schedule for that and reaching out to newer members. But if older members are interested, please let us know. We'll block some time out and meet with you anyway if you have any questions about GlobeMed or anything like that. And finally, there is a Chipotle fundraiser on Wednesday, the 26th. So yeah, I think in the email today, the flyer was attached for that. And then it'll be on the recap email again this week. So yeah, we'll see you all at Chipotle if you're there. This is the Stetson one, by the way, and not the one on Clifton. So there's more specific directions on there, but it is the one that's closer to the medical school, if that helps people know where that's at.
And also, in addition to that, like if you don't want to wait in line for it, there's like an online code you can use. So like you can order online and just put the promo code, and like your order will get put into the fundraiser. Because I know it's cold, so like if you want to just do that for easy convenience, that is also an option.
Are there any last minute questions or anything before committee time? Okay, in that case, I'm going to reset up the breakout room. So it's going to be another hot minute, but short